Welcome to On Air by Yoga for First Responders. This is Eric Brenneman, one of your co hosts. This episode, we have the pleasure of talking with Anne Webb. Anne has a heck of a history from being a member of the U.S. Air Force to the Asheville Police Department for her 24 plus year career in law enforcement, going through many different positions within the agency, including sergeants of patrol, physical fitness instructor, crisis negotiation member, peer support, honor guard, wellness program, assisted with hiring a wellness coordinator, and assisted with writing policy and procedures for a new program. After she retired, she works with the community college, teaching some basic law enforcement classes. She teaches physical fitness and just recently integrated YFFR programming into that academy. She's a mom to an awesome son. She is divorced, but recently remarried to an amazing husband, she says. He's a retired captain from the Asheville Fire Department. And her entire career, she was Ann Fowler. Anne is an amazing guest. This is an extremely vulnerable conversation about a whole host of topics, including resilience, including aging gracefully through public safety careers, what to do once we retire, and more. It was such an honor and pleasure to talk to Anne and get to know her. Thank you, Anne, for sharing your story. I hope you enjoy this episode.
Welcome to Yoga for First Responders On Air, where we break down yoga, neuroscience, resilience, and public safety in a manner that's authentic, educational, and most importantly, entertaining and lighthearted. I'm YFFR's founder, Olivia Mead. As a yoga instructor and neuroscience enthusiast, I'm passionate about supporting first responders and anyone looking to improve their overall human performance. Each week, we'll dive into a new topic and often bring on expert guests to share their insights and experiences. But we'll also keep it real and share our own stories and struggles along the way. So whether you're a first responder or seeking to master the science of mental and physical resilience, this podcast is your ultimate guide to triumph over life's challenges with unbreakable strength and unwavering fortitude. By pressing play, your training has begun. Cool. Anne, it is so great to see you again.
It's good to see you too.
So Anne came to our Miami training and 035, class 035. By the way, I had a nightmare last night, and this is a recurring nightmare about being at instructor school and no one is listening to me.
I mean, that's not that far off from normal.
No, people listen. They listen because I threaten their lives, so they listen.
Exactly. Yeah.
But like in this dream, I was like doing class 0 and people were like 3, like not responding. And I was like, what is wrong with you guys? Like I had that nightmare last night. But anyway, no, you guys were totally on it. And so we really wanted to have you on, and Jess read your essay and she was like, we have to have Anne on because it's just like you brought up things that need to be discussed that I haven't seen discussed before. And, even Eric, when we were, getting our tech stuff worked out, even Eric has questions and things to contribute about this because of conversations he's had. And I'm like, yeah, and I have questions too. So basically, you have a lot I want to talk about. And when I look over here, I'm looking at my notes.
Okay.
So I have a lot I want to ask you about, but I really do want to focus on being a female in like just logistically, all the stuff that comes up in these professions, because I mean, you've had a career in the Air Force and as a police officer, and like I have some really basic questions like, when you're on your period, like what? So I want to kind of get into stuff like that. I also want to mention, so North Carolina, so you're with Asheville PD, and did you know that I went to school in Winston-Salem?
No, I did not.
Yes, so North Carolina is a special place in my heart. I went to North Carolina School of the Arts when I was 14, so it was boarding school. And my high school boyfriend was from Asheville. And so actually he was from Hendersonville.
Mhm.
But we spent a lot of time in Asheville, and it's such a rad little town, so I am familiar with it. It's kind of at least when I was there 25 years ago, it was like hippie and kind of like, funky. Like, is that still how it is?
It has changed a lot, actually. If you were there 25 years ago, that's when I was starting my career at APD, at Asheville Police Department.
Okay.
So, so it has grown since then, but it is still very hippie, artsy, very cool place to be.
Okay, that's awesome.
And I'm
So,
going to throw you, Olivia, real
yeah.
quick under the bus because I feel like in our collection of patches and coins and everything else, you actually have an Asheville PD patch.
Sure. I have to
So
look
Huh?
there is clearly some kind of connection there back a while too.
through.
And I didn't mean to derail the conversation, but I'm gonna
Oh.
have to now we are gonna have to dig this out and figure out like why
So in
that's
our
in our
old
collection.
place, and we had all our patches up. Where we're living now, we knew it was a transition place just for a year, so we didn't really put much up. So my patches are somewhere, so I'll have to look
Along with her memories of how she got them.
how long. I
Oh,
have to like look
I
at it for
can't
the
remember
memories to come
either.
back. Um,
No.
okay, so are you from North Carolina?
No, I'm actually from Florida. My parents moved us up here when I was in high school.
Okay, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, it was okay. It was a little nervous I was a little nervous at first,
Yeah.
but it actually turned out to be a really awesome thing, a really good thing.
Okay, cool. So like leaving friends and stuff like that, was that a deal for you, or like were you like, I'm adaptable?
I'm adaptable. I have always been, so yeah.
And so it is staying like kind of in the same climate, the same part of the country. I moved from the Bay Area of California to North
Yes.
Carolina. I couldn't even understand people talking. I couldn't, their accent was so thick. I'm like, what are you saying to me? And my hair was a mess because of the humidity. It was like such
Oh yeah,
a
that
culture shock. So, so okay, cool. So you enjoyed, and so at what point were you like, you know what? Military, that's what I want to do. When did that kind of shift for you? What was your calling to that kind of service?
so it's kind of funny. After high school, I went to the community college to become a teacher, and I thought I was going to be like a PE teacher or something like that.
Rick's mom was a
Uh,
PE teacher along with a math
oh
teacher.
yeah.
Yeah, she did.
Uh, so-
Well, she was a coach. She coached sports. She was a math teacher through and through. She
Okay, but
was
she was a coach.
coach, yeah, in middle
What's the
school
difference
sports.
between
Like it's
coaching and PE? Come on, it's
it's the day job versus the after school job.
so even though
well,
you
I actually
go into that
go
though,
ahead.
you're fitness forward. I mean, you're a fitness
Yeah.
instructor. Like, yeah, okay. All right. So you were
Yep.
going to go to school for PE. Keep going.
And I realized I was kind of burnt out on school and tired, so
Yeah.
I decided, I'll try to go into the Air Force. So I applied, and while I was getting my information on the jobs that were available, the quickest one was being a police officer. And I knew myself well enough to know if I didn't hurry up and do it, I was going to chicken out. So I was like, okay, well, I'll do that. I'll be a police officer without any understanding of what I was getting ready to do. So 3 months
Wow.
later, I was in Lackland Air Force Base going through basic training.
Wow. Yeah, we've done a couple, gosh, three different kinds, including instructor school at Lackland. So we're very familiar with that. We've have a great relationship with the Air Force. We've done lots of work with them and the Air Guard, and so a special place in my heart for that too. So since you said you didn't know what you were getting into, at what point were you like, holy shit, this is not great for my mental health or nervous system? And I did not realize that.
So I was stationed at like within the first year. I went through basic training and it was just like this tunnel that you just kind of go through and you don't think about it. And then I got stationed at Fort Bragg, Pope Air Force Base, North Carolina. And while I was there was an incident in Panama where the Cubans were leaving Cuba and then they were housing them in Panama. And that was in December of '94. And that was my first time going out of the country, experiencing life and seeing the real world in Panama during Christmas. I'm sitting there guarding this area. I'm just like, very interesting. And I had to grow up pretty quickly.
How old were you?
That's
I was 20 years old.
Okay.
so a guy that I was on the fire department with was he was in the army and he was down in Panama in that same time frame, obviously. So yeah, so it's crazy to hear like the worlds are colliding quickly around around Panama at that moment. So anyway, continue on. His stories are probably a little different than your stories. I'm just
Yeah.
saying, 18-year-old boy in Panama, like doing
Yes.
18-year-old boy things in Panama while
Yeah,
he was
you
with
don't
the
have any
army. Like
secret children, probably, that you don't know about.
No, no, no. I would know.
Another difference between male and
Yes.
female in this profession, right?
Exactly. No, and
Um,
that's a funny story because one of my sergeants that I came to work for at Asheville Police Department was in Panama with me as well. He was stationed at Fort Bragg at the same time, got out a little bit before me. So it's funny how the world's so small and you don't know who you're going to run into.
totally.
Man, 20 years old, like when I was 20, I just got out of acting school and I was in New York City and I got a job as in children's theater. I was in children's
Oh,
theater and I was like, what do I do? Like, I consider myself mature, but when I think of what other 20-year-olds are doing or standing guard and like, holy crap, that's just so commendable and amazing. And I think this is why I really do have a heart for those in military and public safety. It's like I don't know, it brings it, I guess it could go two ways, right? I imagine it bringing out this resilience, but if you're not prepared for it, it could easily go, the other way. Um, so at what point then, so like you're like, okay, wow, holy shit, this is another level. I got to grow up. Then at that point did you take the mentality of that most military do and like suck it up and bust through? Like
yes.
was that your sort of first way of handling it?
Yes. I had to grow up very quickly and learn that being a girl was going to be much different in this atmosphere, and that I had to not not allow my emotions to get the better of me, because it was pretty much either you suck it up and press on, or you find another career. You're not going to be a fit.
Because they
So
don't give you another option. They don't
no,
give you
not
an
back
option of
then.
like, let's
Mm-mm.
work with this stress to make you a better airman, They're like, they don't give you that option.
No, no, not at all. You
Yeah.
just kind of deal with it and you learn, and sometimes you succeed and sometimes it's a big failure, but yeah, you just have to press on.
So let's talk about being a female. Like just a couple, first of all, I need to know, what do you do about your period? Like seriously, you're in Panama. Like what do you do?
Well, you do the best that you can. I mean, we have our little hooches that we can take a shower in, but the rest of the time you're with everybody else, so it's kind of hard to manage it. But back then we didn't talk about it. You just dealt with it, and it is what it is. And sometimes stress it'll cause it not to happen, which you were kind of thankful for.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I mean, I feel like I would get on a birth
I
control
mean,
to like because I was on a birth control that didn't give me my period for years,
yeah.
you know.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so and that it was like that was part of it. So I was like, I would do that. That's if
and you
it
said
were me.
something, I mean, you said something that's like to me just absolutely nuts is like, so we all know that like stress can actually cause the menstrual cycle to pause. You said that. And then
Hmm.
you can be grateful for it. Like think about that for a minute. Like, but like how crazy is it that we can be grateful that we have so much stress in our life that it would like pause my natural body cycles from happening? Like
Yeah.
that's so that like to be to like the amount of shift of perspective that has to take place to be grateful for that to happen is just almost arguably insane at this point. Like looking back historically, right? Like I mean, and talk about shoving things down and hiding them and boxing them off and all the psychological, quite frankly, effects that come along with that as well that we don't even start to talk about or realize. Like this is like, my God, like I'm just gonna sit back and listen because and tease those threads out because to me when you said that it's just like that's insane that like you were grateful for that.
And I can, but I
Yeah.
see also like we know that heightened stress when you're in survival, the reproduction stops, right? All of the unnecessary things for survival stop. And so you're in this headspace of survival. And if you're like, I can take this one thing off my plate, then
Yeah.
great. You're not thinking about long-term effects or hormone imbalance. You're like, let me get through this, you know?
Yes.
And so I guess I can imagine like, okay, everyone has to use the restroom. That's one thing all of us have in common. So you would just be using it for another reason during that time if you did get your period. Like I mean, honestly, logistically, because when I was younger too, and I'm talking about 20 years old, like nowadays it's a different mentality, but at 20 years old, it's still hard to manage your menstrual cycle just living a regular life in the United States, let alone the circumstances you were in. So I can't imagine dealing with that as a young woman with these men around that you have no one to. Did you have other women there to support you at all?
Yeah, not unfortunate, but fortunately, I did. We all came from the same base, and there were other bases there as well. But the group that we stayed together, there was four of us, um, five of us. There were five of us counting me, other females, which is kind of unusual because
Yeah.
especially back in '94, there wasn't a large female population in the military, let alone in the police, or it was uh, not, it was security police was the name of my career field.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So, oh my gosh, a gust of
I
wind just happened. It was so
also appreciate.
sorry, a gust of wind just happened and like and I was like, is someone breaking in? Okay,
I
hypervigilance
also.
back down to normal.
Oh,
Oh, sorry.
we
Gust of wind just knocked Anne's camera down. We're
I
like,
know, right? Falling
I was gonna
apart
say I
here.
also appreciated your story of like I got done with college, was kind of burned out with school, and so jumped into the military law enforcement career. Because I got done with college, I graduated with a political science degree, and I was like, that was really dumb because now I can either be a teacher or be a lawyer, neither of which sounded like a whole lot of fun at that point. I was like, and so my dad had been a firefighter, and so I fell into the fire service. Like that's
Yep.
that's kind of how I got into it as well. Like it
I'm
wasn't
burned out.
necessarily
Let's go into a high stress career.
yeah, it's just like,
Yeah.
what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do with that thing that I just spent 4 years on that is
Yeah.
worthless at this point? It ended up not being worthless, but like I got to the end of the college and it was just like, okay,
Yep.
figure something else out.
So let's talk about other parts of being female there. So we've got like the logistical, like physiological part. Okay, we're figuring that out. And then what are some other things that are big differences? Were you treated differently? Were you given different assignments, or were you expected to do the same assignments, but literally because when I did Fire Academy, there was one female that taught me a few things, how to do things differently, like with pulling a dummy, we have to use more of our hips, right? Because that's our center of gravity. And so as soon as she kind of showed me a different body position, I was really able to do it. Same thing with the what's it called, Eric, when we pull the ceiling down? Pulling,
Overall,
yeah. Same thing,
overhaul,
yeah, with
reach and
the
pull.
the tool thing.
She's
Yeah.
frozen.
What?
So as we're waiting for her to come back online, she was asking what other like body mechanics, like what other were you expected to do the same job? Which I would
Yes.
imagine yes. And so
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, no, it was much different. You just kind of, that's what I was always athletic in high school. I ran track, cross country. I knew the dynamics between guys and girls. It was no that, but when you go into the military and it is completely different, you are not down upon, but you are expected to level up to the same as your counterparts. So as your male officers as well. So you just really had to learn to, and unfortunately, and even in the police department, there were three categories that women usually fit in. We were either a bitch, we were either a lesbian, or we were a wuss. We weren't able to do the job. So I fell into the
Anyone all
category.
three?
Yeah, at one point. I was all three. Well, according to rumors and everything else like that, of course, but I fell into the bitch category
Yeah.
because that's where I was at. And
Yeah.
I just learned to stand up for myself, to push very hard, and not to take crap from other people. And it carried on into my career as a police officer. I got the nickname as called the Black Widow because I was very determined. And when I was a field training officer, I was the one that would get rid of the officers that, well, not get rid of, but documented well enough to where the officers that didn't belong there were no longer there. So I was very much the bitch category. And so I just learned how to do that.
I can see that and it's interesting because do you feel as if those categories were made by everyone else, or did the female kind of have to identify with one of those things to get through it? So, or maybe a little bit of both. And the reason I'm asking that is because I don't view females like that, but I can see them putting themselves in that category. And obviously, the lesbian one, it's like, that's not okay. I've decided I'm going to be the
Right. Yeah.
lesbian. But like,
Right.
for instance, the bitch versus the wuss, right? So
Right.
I've dealt with, and I'll tell a story where like I've seen how a woman has been hard for me to work with, but that's because she's had to be that way to get where she
Mhm.
is, right? I
Yeah.
can see that. And then I've also seen some police officers, female police officers who are like, you know what? I'm gonna just take the back seat. I've kind of seen that. And I haven't put that on them in my view. So I'm wondering if they kind of had to identify as one or the other for, their survival through the career. What do you think about
Yeah.
that?
I do. Because you also get, you know, I feel like this is a category of the way that male officers viewed female officers for the longest time. Because, like, and I'm sure with the fire department too, where they say, oh, she's just coming in to get married, or she's coming to find a husband, that kind of stuff too, which is
Well,
so
joke's on
irritating. But
them. Worst place to find a husband. Just kidding. I mean, I
I
found
know.
my husband there, but he's an anomaly.
Well, I found my husband there too. He's on the fire department side, so.
Okay, all
But
right. So maybe that's, but it's funny 'cause
No,
I said when I got
I'm gonna
divorced,
have
my
yeah.
first husband, I was like, I shall not be marrying anyone in public safety. I'm going to marry an investment banker. I was,
there you go. Yeah.
and here I am. What were you going to say, Eric?
I was gonna say no, don't look. The fire department's not where you want to find a husband either,
No.
usually. So
No. But I feel like the women kind of put themselves in that category, and then they're mean to other women because they expect them to stand up to that standard as well. But I am thankful as I was retiring from the police department to see um, that is changing, and more women are coming into the police department and getting there's a better understanding and view of how women do have a good they belong there, and they do really well in the police department, and we don't have to fit into these three categories. We can be our own person.
Yeah, I've actually noticed that too. So, as an outsider, I've worked with several different police departments around the country. So, I get this kind of cool view of the trends that are happening. And I've noticed the same thing. I've been doing this for 12 years. Yes, 12 years I've been teaching to first responders, and I have definitely seen a trend shift. And in fact, where we used to live in Castle Rock, Colorado, I was worked with their police department, friends with the commander there, and I was talking to him about this concept, and he actually said we need the female energy in
Mhm.
the police department. We need to have both of those approaches, the feminine and the masculine, and it doesn't necessarily have to come from only a female
Right,
officer. When we talk about feminine versus masculine energy, it's that compassion, the, nurturing, the curiosity, all of that stuff, and that can come from both sides. Um,
right.
But yeah, he was saying this is quite necessary if we are going to be holding our community in true safety.
100%. It is a different dynamic, and it also changes the face of what policing is as well. To see kinder, gentler people, and we're not just a bunch of hard asses kicking people's butt every day. We're genuinely here to help the community and to be a part of the community.
Yeah. So at what point did you, so you're like, okay, suck it up, get through it. That's my only choice. At what point were you like, wait, there might be another way of approaching this and started to kind of understand this resiliency concept and that there could be another approach to moving through the career in a thriving way? Around when did that happen and why?
So that didn't happen until late in my career. For a long time, I stayed with this mentality. I felt that it was necessary to survive this job. When the big riots started happening, COVID happened, all of that, that's when our department started going more towards peer support, trying to be there for each other. We actually have an embedded counseling program now through our police department, which is great, but at the very beginning of that, I felt like, well, I don't think this is really going to work. Nobody's going to be touchy feely. Nobody's going to talk about their feelings. We've always been taught just to suck it up and press on. But once it started to get integrated into the police department, and I was a hostage negotiator, I was part of the crisis negotiation team. So all of us were part of the peer support because we had all had the training to how to speak to somebody. And so it was just a natural transition that we would be the beginning of this. And I saw some good things that came out, and then I saw bad things where we had to definitely improve.
Yeah.
But it was a work in progress.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It came up in that 2020 time frame. I say this all the time to people, and it's probably not going to come as a shock to you, but prior to 2020 for YFFR, our client base, our partnership base, whatever you want to call it, was 75 to 80% fire service. And
Mhm.
then 2020 happened. All of the changes that were required of policing in the United States of America and the spotlight that was shown. And we're now probably 85, no joke, 85% law enforcement partners and 15%
No, that's
fire. The
awesome.
pendulum has swung completely the opposite direction after 2020. It's by not by accident. You said so why do you think what in 2020, in your opinion, changed the dynamics so that all of a sudden the agency was like, oh, we need to take better care of our officers? Because I have a
We
theory, but I'm not a police officer. So I'm curious to hear your perspective or your thought. Like we all know the events of 2020 around policing in America. But then agencies started like, oh, we need to take better care of our officers, peer support, talking, bringing in programs like YFR. Your perspective, like why? Like how did those conversations come up? Like in that moment, real time, if you can call back.
Well, for our agency, we lost a huge amount of officers after that and started talking about we're not taking care of our officers. We're not there to help support them. Unfortunately, it was something that I felt that at that point in time, we were recognizing not only suicide rates are going up, because with our police department, we had two suicides. And it was actually before 2020. Um, we would see that how you feel on the inside is betrayed on the outside. And you would have officers who were more aggressive. There were other things going on in their life, and you can watch it happen in real time in front of you on the way that they policed and the way that they interacted with other people. So I think 2020 was an eye opener, because that is, not only did officers say, "Hey, I can't handle this anymore," and a lot of them left, but we started recognizing it as agencies, like, we have to do a better job than what we're doing right now.
Eric, what's your theory?
Same. I mean, same. Like my argument is that like because policing, the community demanded a change in the way law enforcement was being done in America, whether you like it or not. At that point, there was a catalyst. And I make the argument that it starts with how cities treat their employees, quite frankly. Like Southwest Airlines, it's always ranked as the top for customer service because the company takes care of their employees. Like it's not a secret. And so my argument is that cities got away for a long time with not treating their public safety people well or just kind of sweeping issues under the rug. And so then all of a sudden a huge spotlight is shown that like, hey, we're not taking care of our employees. And so then therefore there's these ruptures happening between the community and our agencies. And it's not just law enforcement, fire services susceptible to this as well. And if we take better care of our employees, our officers, our firefighters, our medics, our dispatchers, they in turn take better care of their next step down, their families, their partners, their community that they're supposed to be protecting and serving. And so that's my theory too. And I think it's in alignment. Like there's a big moment of rupture that allowed us to realize like, hey, we all need to do a better job of taking care of ourselves first in a way. And by ourselves first, it's with looking in the mirror. There's a moment truly of awareness brought upon us. And I think it's not by accident that the pendulum has swung to that we're working closely with law enforcement. I'm so damn proud of it. Like I feel so strongly and so passionate. I say this just about every instructor school because it's when I get to interact with most with my brothers and sisters in blue. And if people would just stop to actually talk and have conversations and learn about these people and then learn about how the brain works and learn about human psychology, it's like we can move these conversations so far forward so fast. And I mean, and we have, but we're this is and then gosh, we can pull the onion back into community policing and how we're changing law enforcement in America and everything else. And it's so awesome to be part of programming and part of institutions that are forward looking now, such as Asheville, such as other major agencies across the country, and doing the damn work, like literally doing it. And that's what's so cool about it. And so I appreciate that, like my vision or what I thought was going on from the outside looking in and hearing it from you is in pretty good alignment, that it was a moment of awareness where we realized we need to take better care of ourselves, and which in turn takes better care of our communities. And that changes dynamics completely.
No, I agree. That's what I went to one of the national conferences, and I was listening to, I think it was the chief of police for Bend, Oregon. They have such an amazing program, and I was fortunate enough to be able to help with our wellness program right before I retired. But there are so many agencies that have gone above and beyond to help their officers and to make it a better place. And you can see it. You can see it in the community. You can see it in the officers and their ability to maintain their officers as far as trying to think of the right word. Instead of them quitting, they're staying, and they're staying long term. Whereas now the tradition is the officers stay at one agency for a little while and then they'll move on to somebody else and move on. There's no ownership within that agency to stay the entire time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's we've been able to see some really great agencies too, and we're seeing that longevity and sustainability, that and uh, cities and anyone in charge of the budget, unfortunately the well-being, although they may think that's, a noble thing, they're not looking at that. They're looking at the bottom line, but also the bottom line is helped, by the longevity and well-being too, so both are true.
Oh my gosh, it's so true. Like the amount of institutional knowledge and actual literal money that goes out the door every time an agency loses an officer or firefighter to a neighboring agency is insane. Like the investment just to get somebody through academy, through FTO and out to the field is well more than their salary. I mean, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars by the time somebody actually goes from recruit to officer on the street or firefighter or probationary firefighter to firefighter, whatever. And so it is a bottom line conversation. Like if for the folks out there that are counting money, it's not by accident that there's studies out there that show like investing in health and wellness of your people has a literal dollars and cents ROI. I mean, there's that one study out of Australia that literally a 4-hour training that was similar to YFFR had a 13 to 1, $13 to $1 spent. savings. Like they were able to save on like between sick budgets, overtime budgets, injury. And so they literally, I mean, the study is awesome, but it was a $13 savings for every $1 spent. And it's like, you can't find a better investment anywhere in the world. Like God, I wish I could find an investment that gave me a 13 times return on it. Let's for God's sakes. Like,
Well, and this is, as you know, Anne, I think a lot of the resistance to wellness training and all that stuff is no one wants they know, just like you said before, we got to get through this career. We got to be hard. Don't soften me up with this wellness
Right.
bullshit, right? So that's why I really want to take the conversation out of touchy-feely and let's talk about dollars and cents. Let's talk about this. Because the wellness, the longevity and the wellness of the officers, that's gonna happen regardless. We don't have to focus on that. So if you want to focus on the dollars and cents, if you want to focus on the tactical side of it, let's do it to make it more of a conversation. And then the wellness part is coming along for the ride. But I think when we stay too much in a touchy-feely thing, then
Yes.
I'm generalizing, right? Of course, we want, more of that soft conversation just in general, because when officers are compassionate, they can be compassionate to the public. But I'm just talking about getting this conversation into the mainstream public safety conversation, right? We got to talk tactics. We got to talk dollars and cents. We got to talk that way for it to be widely adopted. And so I think these kinds of studies are, very important to acknowledge when we're talking about peer support and all of that. We have to talk about the real long-term, outcome of it. And you mentioned, and I didn't know this, that you were in hostage negotiation. I love crisis negotiation. We had a crisis negotiator at our last training who's awesome. I think I want to do another podcast with the two of you because when I went through a very mini cute crisis negotiation little mini training, and there's actually another one online through NTOA that I want to take because I was like, this is yoga philosophy. It is. Because, and I'm so mad at myself. I can't find the notes from that. They might be in my parents' basement. I don't know. But I remember this triangle of the one that's doing the talking, the coach, the observer. Like there's like these, three pillars. And that's yoga philosophy. There's our ego, then there's the
Hmm.
observer, and then there's this and there's that. And you have to have compassion towards someone who's probably done bad things. You have to have
Hmm.
compassion and self-awareness of yourself when you're on the verge of not doing a good job anymore and you have to take yourself back. Like you want to be the one to save the day and you might have done 95% of the work, then you have to switch and this person actually successfully finishes the job because you did all the work ahead of time, but you have to put your ego aside and it's just like these are yogis. Those who do crisis negotiation are yogis because a yogi is someone who is grounded, compassionate, holds boundaries, has awareness that like I mean, that's the ultimate to me. So I really want to create. Do you see, am I on the right track, Anne, with this?
Yeah, I never thought of it that way. And that's fine. You said, you want to be the one to save the day, but I have had several incidences where I didn't save the day and I
Yeah,
was totally aware of what was happening and basically talked to the person until they committed the act that they were going to commit. So it is hard. And as a police officer, you have to understand you're not going to save everybody and
right.
you have to be aware of how that's going to affect you too, the
Mhm.
good and the bad of it.
And that's what our other student who's in crisis negotiation, he told me the same thing. And he told me about an incident and he, big dude, lots of experience, military as well, went into a corner and sobbed, after this incident where it didn't turn out the way he wanted. And he felt so close and he sobbed, got himself back together, and then pushed through. And he was saying this to me because he said, if I only had the tool of putting a neural reset in, putting a breath work in that moment, like in real time, or with his team before anything else. This just happened. We've got to regulate ourselves. So that's where I'm talking about taking it out of touchy-feely into a tactical tool. No one's probably in the mood to touchy-feely debrief, but if like here's a tactical tool to get ourselves processing what just occurred, you know? Um, so yeah, and I took that training in 2017. So, but so for the past 8 years, I have been thinking about this. I have been thinking that I wanted to write an article. I want to do a podcast. There's just so many parallels.
This is going to be
No, that
I don't know. Is there a hostage negotiator association? Like, was there an association of all of y'all?
Well,
there is.
yeah, because there's also a conference for it, because that's what our other student was telling us that there is a crisis negotiator conference.
Mhm.
Yeah, no, because I was talking with this gentleman out of at our last instructor school too, after since then, and he was like, "Dude, I had this guy." He's like, "You're gonna think this is hilarious." He's like, "I had this guy talking to him for hours, like wasn't sure how he was gonna play out one way or the other. Wasn't like tried all of our tools and everything else, just wasn't getting through, wasn't getting through." He's like, and then all of a sudden I was just like, "Screw it. Hey, man, do this for me. Can you take a breath in through your nose and down into your belly?" And like started coaching this guy through three-part breath work just to like interrupt the cycle of everything that was happening and get into his physiology, like the person that he was interacting with. He didn't share how the outcome went, but he's like, Eric, just like changing the cycle of everything that we were doing for hours broke through to this guy, and we actually were able to start moving forward after that. He's like, and we didn't get into how the outcome was, but he's like, just being able to tap in to another human being's physiology, like, hey, take a breath in through your nose, and just started guiding him through the three-part breath that we coach and teach and everything else. He's like, it was enough to interrupt all of the negotiation and all of the things that just were like dead ending, and allowed us a moment to like restart, to re-engage and start going forward. And he was like, this is a cool tool. And then I talked with another friend who used to be a crisis negotiator. I didn't know that he was, but he's out of the greater Las Vegas area. And he's like, dude, seriously, he's like, that's powerful. If like all of a sudden you can like start to like interact with these folks at a true physiological level, just for then a psychological level, he's like, that can change the game. He's like, you guys got to start talking with more crisis negotiators about this kind of stuff.
That might
So
be a thing that I had 8 years ago of do this. Also, I was about to make a dark humor joke and I stopped myself. But you'll know where I'm going. When he said that he started doing breath work, what if the guy was like, now you're making me doing fucking yoga? Well, fuck it all. Anyway, I hope our audience knows where that comes from in my heart. It's a joke. Okay, so at one point were you like, okay, so now you're on the resilience train, you're understanding it, you're like, okay, this is a better way. How did yoga for first responders cross your path and you were like, yeah, I want to do this, and why did you want to do this?
So I've practiced yoga on my own, and I've been a physical fitness instructor for the police department since 2007,
Okay.
and I retired in 2023. Yes, yes, I had to think about that for. I've been retired for a year now. I have always introduced yoga, little bits and pieces, nothing like what we talk about in class, no fluff, nothing like that, just basic movements to help with mobility and things like that. And I thought once I retired, I was like, oh, maybe I want to become a full-fledged yoga instructor. Uh, didn't feel like I was the personality to be a yoga instructor because I didn't feel like I was the granola or soft. And I felt like I'd be like a military style yoga class. And then I started following you guys on Facebook. And at first I thought, well, this is kind of hokey. This is going to be like every other yoga person who has come into the police department, not understanding our job, not understanding what we do, and trying to fit us into this box that we don't fit in. But then I started listening to the podcast. I started watching you guys, and it really changed my mind. And I believed in what you were doing before I ever went to class. I'm like, this really works. And then when I went to class, you totally blew me away and broke into this brain of mine that I have had for so long, and actually let some of my guard down and understood what was going on. I've had all this training. I knew how to be reactive, but I didn't know how to be proactive. And the breathing is a huge key. And it's kind of funny. I teach it now. I teach yoga for first responders to my basic law enforcement class out here in Haywood County. And they were telling me, they're like, because they're new and they're excited. And they were watching videos, a police officer in Arizona who was in a car chase, who started doing 3-part breath during his car chase to calm him down. They're like, oh, this really works. And they feel all important because they're getting
They're
something that
doing it.
the West Coast, yeah, is doing, and they're learning it here before they ever start their career. So,
Oh
but
my,
anyways, that's how I came into
made
it.
my day. You just made my day.
Yeah, we're cutting that as a soundbite. It's going to be out there on social media forever as to,
No, I'm just
well,
triple checking. I am recording, right? It's recording. Oh my God.
well, because the biggest, I say, like, because yoga has been brought into agencies, it has been brought
Mhm.
into fire departments, it has been brought in, and which the biggest fight we have to make all the time is that we are different because people just assume that, oh, it's yoga, it's the same thing. But no, we are different. And you just heard it firsthand from an officer, from a military, from a veteran. Like, you heard it, folks. You can't make it up anymore. We're different.
No.
It
And
is very different.
I'm not going to mention which agency, but there is an agency Eric and I know of and who knows us. And we work with them, work with their cadets. We come in and um, the union part brought in a yoga instructor. And we are coming in later, right? So the fire department brings us in, the union brings in other people, whatever. And we kind of saw that this other yoga instructor is coming in, and I was like, "Ah, shit, man. Now she just made my job, she or he, I don't know, just made my job 10 times harder because I
Yeah.
can tell from what they were doing that that's like, okay, we're putting in the misconceptions there. Great. So now we have to come in and we're starting at a deficit and we have to correct all of this shit and we have to, so it truly is without proper training, you truly are doing everyone a disservice. Like yoga teachers just get training. When I went to teach military and veterans, when I was like, that's the path I want to go on, I went and got trained. I had already been teaching yoga for 10 years, but I knew that the approach had to be tailored. So like, please get trained for this specialized and this branding and this commercialized yoga is keeping folks like you, an excellent instructor, from offering this because you're like, this isn't me. I don't want to become a vegetarian and smell essential oils all day. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's not part of it. You didn't know that. And so unfortunately, it's just doing this disservice of keeping who could be really great instructors from offering this work, to up and coming, not even up and coming, and even veterans in the field. um it's never too late, right? Anne, tell us it's never too
Right.
late.
It's never too late. No, no, it is. It is an important part that should be a part of the academy now, as far as their basic training. It should be. And we should have it to where we can connect to all the officers that are, because it is so important. And I can't properly describe it, but if you take it seriously, you do the work, it helps so much. It helps me now in my retired life. It helps me to calm myself. Before we had this meeting, I was doing my 3-part breath just because I was a little anxious about this and didn't want to come off looking like a goober on the
Listen,
podcast.
we
So
don't want to present you as a goober, so we would never, we would edit everything if that's how it sounded.
I
Because
appreciate that.
the everyone thinks of like going from being a civilian to public safety. You go through the academy, that's a huge transition, test taking, all this stuff. But another huge, maybe even harder transition is out, right? Into
Yes.
retirement. And so I think that's why like don't think you're too late, you're at the end of the career. Oh, I'm about to retire. No, start now so you can transition and have this new, you know, Eric tells me a lot when he transitioned out about the loss of identity and purpose. But if you can be a yogi, right? Like if you have these tools, then when you leave the service you were in, you're still that. You still have all those things and all those tools you can be taught. So yeah, I think transitioning out is also another big thing that has to be focused on.
Yes.
How long ago did
Yes.
you retire?
December 1st of 2023.
Okay. And I'm curious because this is a very big, like I have my dad's 30 retired battalion chief, so it hits close to home, transitioned out of the fire service decade plus years ago at this point. But I am curious, like, how was that transition without these tools and then with these tools? Because we have the tagline that we want to be there for folks from recruitment through
Mhm.
retirement. And I don't think we're
Yeah.
missing the mark with that tagline. I think it's a very, very critical tagline. And so I'm just curious to hear about that experience, like having gone through retirement without having tools and resources in place, what that was like when all of a sudden you're at home and you're not in uniform daily and things just kind of like, oh, you're finally almost, I'm not going to put any thoughts on you. I'm going to let you share. I'll stop.
So I'm very fortunate. My husband retired from the Asheville Fire Department 4 years before I did. And we had a conversation when he retired. And like as soon as we got home after his shift was over, he was like, I fucked up. I shouldn't retire right now. He was scared to death. So we kind of worked through he went on a single motorcycle trip down to Baja and kind of got in his own head and felt, he had a purpose. So I had him as a partner to help me through this. In the police department itself, I was freaked out. I was afraid because this is my identity. I have been either Airman Fowler, or that was my maiden name, or Officer, Sergeant, Lieutenant Fowler my entire adult life. And I had no idea what I was going to do. I didn't have an identity outside of being a police officer. So when I was getting ready to retire, my husband's like, we're going on a trip. We're just going to leave as soon as your retirement party's over and you're not going to think about it. And it was great. It was nice, but it definitely didn't help me to transition or to figure out what's going on. I even went to counseling because it's kind of part of my story of what I put in my essay. I went through it's, sorry, through premenopause and I'm still going through it. And there was some stuff going on in my head that I didn't understand. And I went through counseling. I did everything I was supposed to do, and it still didn't work. With yoga for first responders, it helps me to understand and to calm the chatter in my mind and helps me to take a breath, realize these thoughts that are going through my head, these negative thoughts, it's not who I am, and learning how to make new paths in my brain. I'm not saying everything scientifically proper,
Oh,
but
no,
You're saying
don't
it
worry.
perfectly. You're saying it
Exactly.
perfectly.
It's perfect.
but understanding how these things I can add positive stuff to my brain. I can talk to myself better than I do, and it's something that I wish I would have been doing a long time ago because it would have helped to transition out. It would have helped when I was second guessing myself on hard calls and things like that. That, am I doing the right thing? Am I, making proper decisions? Not that this is like a miracle worker or anything like that, but it definitely does help. It helps you to take your breath, to understand, and not let the negative chatter overwhelm you so much when you do start practicing putting positive um, thoughts into your mind and feeling confident with what you're doing.
You know, you said something important that I want people to understand too. This is not a miracle. It's not a drug. You don't take a pill and you feel better.
Yeah.
What my teacher told me when I left India, he's never been to the West. I said, "What can I teach on your behalf in the West?" Right? And he said, "Teach awareness." Yoga at the end of the day is awareness, right? It goes back to the crisis negotiation. You've got the one doing it, and then you have the team who is your awareness, right? Is who's watching and seeing. And so if you can have awareness and separation, and to know that you are not those thoughts, especially with the hormone changes. And this is what I want to get into this. If you can watch it, then you can course correct. I think of it as a director, right? A director of a play. And the director is watching the actors on stage, right? And then can say, stop, you move here, you move there, we're going to do it again. We identify as the actors because we are on the stage, right, doing our thing, but we're also the director watching. And we can also say, stop, go this way. This isn't the right thing, right? So yoga helps us separate and see us as the one going through the play and the one, directing it. So if you can say, okay, I'm feeling this way, identify it as hormone changes, then number one, you're not as reactive because you don't feel you're being attacked by life. You're like, okay, this is what's
Right.
happening. And I can identify with this because I don't know if I've shared with you or not, but we have our baby through IVF. We are trying again. So IVF has been part of our life for several years. And not only as a woman, we can tell with our cycle just normally, PMS and I feel good this way, blah, blah, blah. Can you imagine? I just want everyone, can we just talk about this? How in 4 weeks, I used to joke around that I only had 1 week a month where I felt normal because I'm either on
Yeah.
my period, waiting for my period, whatever, but just 1 week where I feel actually, fine. But I'm, but for the past 7 years, I've been either pumping myself with estrogen and progesterone, or I just came off of a 2 months of hormone suppression, right? Which is like menopause, right? In
Impulse.
order to prep myself to go up again. So I've been going up and down, up and down. I'm talking night sweats. I'm talking swollen hands. I'm talking all of this stuff, right? And you have to live your life and you're looking at, so when I remember that it's the hormonal changes and it's not who I am, I
Mhm.
can then make some shifts and respond, So talk a little bit about that. So all of a sudden things are changing and happening, and it does affect your thoughts, everyone. Hormones affect how you think, how you feel. It's incredible. And so, PSA for everyone out there, if something doesn't feel right, please go to the doctor and get a panel of your hormones being checked, your thyroid, all of that, because a little tweak can actually change your life in a great way. So, that's my PSA, but talk about your experience with that.
So my entire career, I was very sharp. I was put in charge of putting programs together. I wrote a grant for our DWI, driving while impaired task force. And I know, as far as there was a lot of things. I was one of the only female drug recognition expert instructors in the state of North Carolina. I was very driven and lots of awards, lots of, accolade or um, recognitions for things in my work that I did. As I started to turn 40, I guess it was about 44, I started noticing, there was little things changing. Didn't know. My education on menopause was after you reach like 51, maybe to 55, you just dry up and that's what happens. That's, there's no, you didn't know. We didn't talk about it. So I had no idea that symptoms could actually start in your late 30s, but started getting forgetful, thought, well, it was just stress, recognized, how to take care of myself. We talk about it all the time. I was very good about understanding that. And a lot of my job, I had a lot of critical incidences. And so I understood all that. But then I started getting forgetful. Then I started feeling almost depressed. It started messing with the way I felt. My confidence bottomed out. I was promoted to a lieutenant position, which I've always felt like I'm a worker bee. And so for me to be promoted into a lieutenant position, I was nervous about it because I didn't feel confident in doing the job. And I always felt like, well, I'm more of the worker than up here in command staff. So there was a lot going on, and I thought, well, this is just stress. We always talk about you can't let your glass overflow. Maybe I have allowed my glass to overflow. I went to counseling. I did our embedded counseling, and there was even times when she was having a bad day, and I counseled her. And it was like I knew the process. I
Yeah.
knew how to do all this, and I knew what to expect, but nothing changed and I couldn't figure it out. And I felt it even got to a point later on, I couldn't even remember some of the officers' names. Like I was a district commander over 30 some officers and four sergeants. And I would be having a conversation and just totally blank out and not know, dang, it's like on the tip of my tongue. One of my female officers or one of my female coworkers who got promoted as a lieutenant the same time I did. Unfortunately, she had a stroke and she survived, obviously survived it. Our chief actually promoted her while she was in the hospital. It was so, but she had a legitimate stroke. And so the big joke for me was I would always say, oh, I forgot this because Diana had a stroke. It's her fault that I can't remember something. But I seriously was thinking, did I have like a mini stroke? Is something going on with me? Just not
Scary.
understanding. Yeah, it is scary because I am of sound mind and body. There's nothing wrong with me. Started having heart palpitations. And again, I'm a very physically fit person. Um, and I went to the doctor. You're fine. I would get looked at like I was losing my mind. I'm like, I feel it. Well, maybe you're just dehydrated. And it wasn't that I was just dehydrated. There were so many things that were going on, and it makes you feel like you're losing your mind, literally losing your mind. So I had it was my last few years, unfortunately, where you're supposed to be excited you're getting ready to retire, you're excited of this new life that you're getting ready, because I got to retire early in my age because I bought back my military time. So I had 4 years. I had 26 years with the police department, counting my sick time. So I actually retired a little under, was it 24 years? So the rest of it's sick time. So here I'm 50 years old and I get a whole new life, but I feel like I'm losing my mind.
Yeah.
And when I went to my girl doctor to say, or my OBGYN, and they say, hey, what do I do? And it was a male doctor, nothing against male doctors, but he was like, oh, you just stay on your birth control until you're 51, and then we'll see what happens. Then you'll be in menopause and you can come off. I'm like, that just doesn't make sense to
So
me. It
you were
doesn't sound
on
right.
birth control and still having this experience. Okay.
Yep. Yep. With night sweats, hot flashes started coming towards the end. And again, it's something that we never talked about. I was never educated on. And when I did go to my doctor, who I expected to be an expert, the answer was, well, just stay on your birth control until you're 51. And I was like, well, how do I know when I will actually be in menopause?
Yeah.
And he said, well, we'll just do a blood test then, but just stay on your birth control. So luckily, I have found a doctor and she's a female doctor who has specialized in premenopausal menopause uh, symptoms. And now also it's for society, everybody talks about it now, which I kept telling my husband, I'm like, it makes me feel so good to know that I am not losing my mind, that I'm not crazy. And the
Nothing's
weight gain
wrong
was
with
the
you.
biggest
Yeah.
thing.
Oh, and
Yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah, just right off it. And it's amazing. Like you just want to be seen, heard, felt like I'm not nuts. Like this is my lived experience for God's sakes. Like,
yeah.
you know? And it's interesting you bring this up and it's perfect timing. And why Olivia was like, oh, Eric might have questions about this. I was just had an event at our HQ last Friday. And there were a couple of women that came up and like, we love what you guys do for YFR. I told them that Olivia's a project that she's working on her personal life. And they're like, okay, we need 800 of these postcards for your candle company to give out to these women at this event we're hosting. And it literally came up. They're like, nobody talks about female hormones and the effect they have on all of the things that you listed out: health, cognition, physical well-being, and then how stress can amplify all of that, or
Yeah.
or shut it off completely, like you said at the very, very beginning. And to me, it's just, thank you for writing about this and coming on here and talking about it, and for Olivia to being open with it, because it just blows my mind that this is something that, like, and they're doing a speech in a couple weeks to 800 women because they're saying, we don't know. They don't know this about their own bodies, about their own cycles, about their own hormones, about menopause. And it's just, I don't know. Like, it's mind blowing to me, but I guess it's because historically it has been taboo to talk about. We just don't talk about
Yeah.
it. Figure it out on your own. Like, I don't know. I'm
Well,
the last week around this conversation is just blowing my mind. Like, I don't understand how we can't have conversations around this. But
well, I was going to say one reason I think is as I think, so I'm turning 43 next week. And
Oh, happy birthday.
thank you. And you said that, this started to creep in at 44, and I don't even know. I actually feel like my body has been pretty balanced throughout my life. And so I'm curious, once I'm off IVF hormones, what will naturally happen. But you had mentioned earlier, you go through menopause at 50, you dry up and, whatever.
Yeah.
I think so on the emotional level, when I think of having a hormone change that subconsciously signals, because we're all animals at the end of the day, that I'm no longer fertile, right? Um, to me, I start to all of a sudden feel embarrassed, bad about myself. Like, you want to be young and vibrant biologically, right? Biologically, that's what brings in the alpha males to reproduce, right? It's all on a biological level. Intellectually, I know I'm fabulous, but
Yeah.
I definitely feel like, fuck, how long am I having my period for? When I stop having my period, I'm not a woman. So I think there's also this emotional embarrassment about it because you don't want to dry up. I mean, I don't know.
No. Well, and I feel like society has put it to where once you are at that point in your life, then women are no longer women. You're just this body.
Yeah.
And that's not true. There's so much more in life, and there's so much more to do. But we got to have these conversations, and we got to let people know and talk. If I hadn't, what I'm afraid of and what worries me is if I hadn't have been cognizant of how I was feeling and understanding, not necessarily that I was going through menopause or premenopause, but how to get help. And I did get help, how to do these things I'm supposed to do, how a woman starts to feel this way and doesn't understand how to get the help. And then we end up, worst case scenario, thinking,
They're
that
depressed.
they take their life. Yeah, and they're depressed.
And
And
that's what leads to that. And they don't know why they're depressed, and there's no answers and no one's helping them. I'm actually doing a talk at the end of March at a maternal mental health summit. And even though it's maternal mental health, like it really is just female mental health, but it's the same thing with postpartum depression, all of this stuff. If you don't have the tools to be aware that something is happening to you, that can be adjusted. I could see you thinking this is no life to live. This is terrible, So
yes,
it really is an awareness, again, back to awareness of this is a hormonal change. It's not me, and it can be supported and adjusted.
yes. For me, medication for hormone replacement therapy
I was
for
going to ask
me
about
worked.
that. Okay.
Yeah, so for me, and not everybody fits in a box, but it did work for me, and it does work for me.
And
So it does make me feel better.
and I'm gonna ask this. Let's hope if you don't have to answer it if you don't want to. But once you started to get a solution, I mean, does sex drive still happen? Does that still work?
Um, not like you're a 20-year-old
Okay.
anymore.
Okay. Okay.
It's
None of us
Honesty.
are.
Thanks for the honesty.
yeah. No, it is, and to be totally honest and open, it's a struggle. And males and females are totally different at this age. And my husband still acts like a 20-year-old, and he's 10 years older than me. And so there is that gap. And when there is a change in your hormones, you feel like, I'm not interested. And that alone becomes an issue in the house, and it makes it hard to navigate.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so
Yeah.
many challenges at so many different phases in life. And that's why like all of these tools to bring awareness, like literally, if it's about awareness, like I can't imagine, like we often look like we live in a townhouse complex. We're like, how are they surviving this world
Without
without
this
tools of awareness?
tool.
Like without these
Yes.
tools,
Yeah.
like are they just going through and just like yelling at each other and slamming shit down?
Yes.
And the answer
Yes.
is yes. Like let's
You
be
hear
real,
it.
that's what's happening because we live close enough to the neighbors.
You hear?
Uh,
Yeah.
but, but it's just my like again, like these these are real human issues. Like people, when we teach them YFR, like, oh, this is so amazing. You should teach this to school teachers or to my kids or to whoever. Like everybody needs this. And like, yeah, people
Like, yeah.
do need lessons in self-awareness and awareness of the situation and that kind of stuff. And so to be able to have this awareness, and I would argue you had it before coming to YFR, so you can navigate what you've been navigating through. We may just have been able to turn that dial up a little bit, uh, but is profound because most people don't, and so then they just walk through and like, what the fuck is wrong with me? He's the asshole, and she's
Exactly.
the, back and forth, and I don't know, like folks that are listening in on this, like, I hope you're hearing the underlying message that like maybe just open your eyes and like look around for a minute. Like take the observer view of what's happening internally with me, what's going on in my marriage, what's happening with my kids. Maybe it's they're not just always assholes. Maybe something, there's so
Yeah.
many layers to it and we have to become aware of all of that. And it's just, yeah, Olivia mentioned we've been going through fertility struggles, and maybe that's opened me up for the conversations around hormones and female hormones and that kind of stuff because one of the benefits, arguably, of going through fertility treatments is everything that happens internally is now happening externally. So all of the hormone changes, like we're manually manipulating them. So we see it happening, miscarriages, we see it happening, things like that. And so all of these things that most people have the internal lived experience where it's not shared externally with their partner, we have a unique experience where it's literally brought out into the open air. We see it happening. Like I'm the one that is adjusting her hormones by sticking a needle into her and pumping
Oh,
it in there, that kind of
yeah.
stuff. So I'm, like we're manipulating all the stuff that normally happens behind a closed door. People don't get to see it. They're not even usually aware of it until something ruptures, and they're like, "Oh shit, what just happened?" And then they look back, like, "Oh, that's what happened up to this moment." And so I would actually give you a lot of credit, Anne, because from your lived experience and how you went through things with your husband, through his retirement into yours, through your menopausal journey, you had incredible awareness throughout it too, whether you realize it or not. We just may have adjusted the dial with the breath work and bringing awareness to it through yoga. But I want to give you a lot of credit.
Well, I appreciate it, but it kind of, that tweaking definitely was very much needed to put all the puzzle pieces back together.
Speaking of worst case scenario, I just had this memory because I was in Asheville when this happened and like right before I was at school, and I first got on birth control when I was 17, I think, something like that. And I was on what they don't use anymore because it was gnarly. And I felt so bad, so insane. And I remember in my dorm room, I saw out my window, I was third floor up, and I was like, I'm gonna jump out that window. That was like that was I was very calm, very logical. I'm gonna jump out that window. I hate
Yeah.
this. And it wasn't fueled by emotion, like I hate this, I'm crying, no, it was
Right.
just like sat up. And luckily I had the awareness, and maybe because I have been practicing yoga since I was 6 years old, to say, no, something is wrong, something's happening to me. And I immediately got off of that kind of, birth control or whatever. It's just amazing how hormones can change your mind and your feelings and your thoughts so extremely you know?
Yeah.
And so when we started fertility stuff, because that had been my experience, I was so worried I was going to get to that point of like insanity again. And thank God I didn't. But what Eric and I, since we do have these tools of awareness and communication, if I'm not feeling well, I say to him, I'm not feeling great. Like I just need to not talk. I'm gonna do laundry and stuff, but I just need to retreat. And because he has awareness of what's going on, he doesn't take offense to it. He doesn't, and he allows that space. So speaking of having these tools, I just had a ping that what if we made an online course starring Anne about about this though? Like you're saying there's no
Yes.
education first conversation. What if we say female first responders on the verge of retirement, this is for you. We're going to talk about I could bring my fertility doctor on to talk about hormones. You could talk about your lived experience. I mean, there is, as far as I know, we'll do some research. This does not exist for this demographic, this niche. So
No.
I don't know. I think we may have to do it and help some folks out.
No, it sounds good to me because that's what, as a female, you have your own struggles as a police officer, first responder, anything that you do, trying to be in this career field and then to add hormones on top of that and mental health and everything else. It is a struggle. And not that men have the mental health as well. And men, even to a point, have issues with own hormone loss with testosterone and stuff like that. So it affects all of us, but for women specifically, it really kicks our butt.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think we just need, let's get, just like we did with yoga, or with yoga for first responders, there's a missing training. Let's make that
Hmm.
training. And I think we could, easily get that done. So Anne, I would say that there's kind of maybe three different audience members we have listening to this. We have the yoga teacher, we have the first responder, maybe, line officer, and then we have commanders, right? Those in the command
Hmm.
staff. Based on what you know now in your career and resilience and what you said worked and didn't work from the wellness stuff, let's first talk to the yoga teacher. What is one thing do you want to say to our yoga teacher listeners about just all of this and resilience and public safety and yoga and et cetera?
So for the yoga teachers, I would say it's kind you have to know the culture. You have to know who you're teaching. You cannot force the first responders into a box of what you have been taught because we are a totally different breed of people. The scripts, the softness, it has to be very straightforward and answer the whys and why are we doing this? And how we do this, just black and white and no fluff, I guess is the best way I can say. And you have to understand, and taking yoga for first responders, even though you may be a yoga instructor for years, but understanding the dynamic of how the traditional yoga class versus what we have now in the Western, like you have taught us, are so different. The traditional, where it started from the very beginning, is how it should be, and very military risk. Let me see, very military like, trying to just very structured is probably a better word. Very structured will be more well received within the first responders versus trying to make them feel all warm and fuzzy inside.
Yeah. And I think if warm and fuzzy is what someone needs in their life, they'll come to it through
Yes,
the gateway of YFFR,
yes,
right? Meaning they'll have,
yes.
just like I talked about with Eric, like I communicate better, he understands better, right? So that sort of compassion and stuff comes through the act of awareness, right? You don't have
Yes.
to start the other way around. Okay, so now let's talk to someone listening who's in either in the beginning or the middle of their career, right? What do you wish
Hmm.
if you could go back? There was this book I read, and it said if you treated every moment like you're actually 20 years older, and magically you got a wish to come back 20 years and live this day again. Like you'd look at it like, oh my God, I'm only 43, and oh my God, I'm gonna you would approach everything so differently. So,
Hmm.
so to the officer, to the firefighter, to the dispatcher who's listening to this right now, let's pretend you're 20 years older. Okay, let's imagine it. Okay, now the genie granted you a wish and you get to live this day again, 20 years earlier. And what would you say to that person?
Definitely that you are a priority, that your life isn't a priority and taking care of yourself. Um, we know in this career field that we're going to see horrible things. We know that, but we should be proactive and taking care of ourselves before these things happen. Instead of right now, we're just reactive. When we do the peer support or we do a critical debrief, it's always after the fact. So taking care of yourself, understanding how your emotions work, and being prepared to calm yourself during these stressful times before they happen is is critical. It's so important um, that that needs to be done because you don't know what to do with all of this emotion, this anger, this sadness, this holy crap, I just saw something no human should ever have to see. We don't know what to do with it. We'll sit in a group setting and talk about it. I'll go to counseling and get some help, but I never prepared myself to have this happen. And we can never prepare ourselves to see these horrible things, but we can definitely prepare our minds to be able to calm it and be better at not trying to think of the right words. We can definitely be better at reacting to the trauma and the stress that we deal with.
Yeah.
And that's what first responder or yoga for first responders does. The
Yeah.
breath work is huge.
And I would say too, like in that moment, you may not feel like you need it, right? You got
Right.
adrenaline, you're 25 years old, you're whatever. Give a gift to your future self, you
Right.
know? Give the gift now, like, okay, I know I don't. It's like when I wake up in the morning, I know I should have water before coffee, right? Even though I really want my coffee now. Give a gift to your future self and have the water first, right? Give a gift to your
Right.
future self. And so you have at your 55-year-old self is going to be so happy that your 25-year-old self took the little time it takes to process and turn it
Right.
into to resilience. That's what it is. We can't stop the stress. We can't stop the ugliness, but you can have a
Right.
tool to acknowledge it, validate it, transform it into something that makes you better.
Yes.
And then finally, let's talk up to command staff who
Hmm.
may be command staff twofold. One is who has the opportunity to plug in some sort of training, um, and they could either check the box with something dumb or they could do something real. Slash, they're also on the verge of their retirement. What would you like to say to them?
To them, I would like to say that, you've got to take care of your officers. If you want a better relationship with your community, it starts within. And you have to be able to take care of your officers, have uh, a good relationship with the officers that they feel like this is a family and that this is something that that you care for them. Granted, there's lines that don't get crossed. There's so I'm going to start over with this. But we got to take care of the officers because if we take care of them, then we take care of the community as well. Um, Going into retirement, it's a scary feeling, and you don't know what is on the other side of that door. I had a friend once tell me that it's kind of like you stop at the train station, you get off the train, and you're standing on the platform, and that train just takes off, and you're left behind. The world keeps going, and you've got to know how to deal with it. So, not only helping your officers to be better, it also helps you to prepare and to be better as well. No matter how much longer you have in the career, but also to help you once you transition out of it and you're left on that platform watching the train go by without you.
I can't imagine so with what I do running this organization, I love doing it. And I can't imagine one day just being like, hey, you're retiring, so you're leaving all this and you don't get to do it anymore. I don't
Yeah.
get to do this. I love this. Like I could see just being like, well, now what? You
Yeah.
know? And so I actually, when I hit burnout in 2019 with this work, it's because I was super, super identifying with it. So when things went well for YFF, I was like codependent with it because when things went well for YFFR, I was happy. When things were hard for YFFR, I felt terrible. And so I really worked hard to separate my identity to be more than this. And, if I had to retire from this today, I'd be super, super sad, but I also have an Olivia outside of this organization too, which I didn't for a while. So I think even if retirement's 10 years out, you need to start separating your identity now. Go to work, do the job, and then know who you are without it.
Yeah, you should, arguably, you should do that from the get-go.
Yeah,
That should be,
yes.
you should always understand that you are not this uniform. You are not Officer so and so. You are Anne, who you were from the beginning, and you've got to have a separation and understand that.
Yeah.
Again, amazingly said, because that's my lived experience as well. You have a strong way of putting these feelings into words, and that analogy is perfect because again, I remember putting my boots down last day that I was head out the door by my own accord, by my
Mhm.
choice, and the tones went off. I was done hugging the guy that was taking over my seat, and they all got on the rig, headed out the door, and they now have stories that I am not a part of. And it's
Right.
just that fast. It's that fast.
Yep.
Eric, that makes me want to cry as because I remember you came obviously home the next morning. And I saw you last time in uniform, and I remember that morning.
Yeah, it's crazy. So I mean, you explained it perfectly. Like that was a great, great, great explanation. So damn, I think we're gonna have to bring Anne into the fold more often. Like
Oh,
we've already got her on the
I let
hook
her
for a
do a
class. We got
course, or we're gonna do our menopause course. We'll call it our, just like how you say girl doctor, we're gonna call it our girl course. That's what,
There you go.
just to be, we're gonna lean into that kind of language. And also, Anne, did you choose to be on our instructor map, or I guess did you opt out to be on our instructor finder map? You're in it. Okay.
I'm
So
in it. Hmm.
yeah, so that's how folks can find you. Go to North Carolina, you'll see her email contact there. So if you are listening in North Carolina and you're like, damn, I want Anne to teach for you can find her on our instructor finder. And that goes for anyone around the
Hmm.
country, even world. If you look at your location, you can see if we have an instructor there. Um, and thank you for spending now into your afternoon with us. Uh,
Thank you.
it was a great conversation and it was really great to see you again. It's great to talk to my trainees as people, right? Because I come in hot, we train, and then I don't really get to let loose with you guys. So it's really fun to do that.
Yeah. Yes. Very right. You are very scary in class. So
I have been told that before. I have been told
I'm
that
sure.
before. But it's funny. We've done 3 instructor schools at Chicago Police Department, and they stopped doing this. The instructors stopped teaching YFFR for like 2020, 2021 during that rough time because they just needed all hands on deck. So, and I think it was 2023, beginning of 2023, they did another instructor school with new people, but also some of the old instructors went through instructor school again just to get back on track. And one of those, previous instructors said to me, Olivia, you're so much nicer this training. And I was like, that's because you know what to do already. You know what I expect. You're not fucking around, I don't have
That's
to
right.
yell at you. You're here on time, you're doing all your stuff. That's why I'm not naturally a bitch. I am just, I just like, you know what's up
Explain
and
one.
get
Yeah.
to hang out. So
Yeah.
yeah, they saw the journey of
Mhm.
my teaching. All right. Well, thanks again. This was a great way. I'm not sure. This is part of our second season. I'm not sure if it's kicking off our second season, but I sure wish it would because this is a great conversation.
No, thank you.
Hey, before we go, I want to remind you that training your mental and physical health is incredibly important, especially for those working in high stress jobs like first responders.
And if you're interested in learning more about yoga for first responders, visit yogaforfirstresponders.org for our on-demand training app, online course platform, in-person training, and more.
Like this podcast, subscribe, and give us a great review. We are so happy to have you part of the YFFR mission.